Welcome to SiteDocs Onboarding Training. This is a generic onboarding training provided to any new starter using SiteDocs, but it also goes into a little bit more detail for portal administrators at sites when it comes to the creation of new projects. So starting off with the core documents. Now, when the primary users or primary clients using SiteDocs will either be coming from the perspective of a trial site, so running commercial trials, or you'll be considering yourself a sponsor where you're overseeing a particular trial at your organization or beyond, maybe with a multi-site study. So let's look at core documents to start with. The purpose of core documents is to remove any document repetition that happens for these general docs. So every time, typically every time you have a new project, you would have a suite of documents that relates to that project. And so instead of repeating it, what we want you to do within SiteDocs as an eClinical platform is for you to upload any general documentation into Core Documents module. And there will be a standard structure in place, but this can be customized for your purposes. But the idea with Core Docs is that when files are uploaded here, anyone who is considered an internal or external user that you've added to your portal, they will have ready access to this. Anyone that is added as an internal user will be able to upload content and also view and download it. If you've added an external user, they will not be able to upload it, simply downloading or viewing files. Let me show you a very simple example, but the sorts of documents that you would upload here would be SOPs, policies, lab reference ranges, training certificates, CVs, temperature logs, anything that is repeated across all of your projects. So just a very simple example is that if I click into support departments, and then under pathology lab references, you'll see here an example folder, which is the lab reference ranges. So when you click into a folder, you would hope to never see multiple versions of a file. You'll only see the latest version. So in this case, for this lab reference range, you see a biochemistry reference range, and it's version 14. So if I click into that version and scroll down, you'll see that there are multiple versions stacked beneath it. And the latest version that you've uploaded will always be considered the current version. If you need a prior version to be set as current, then you would set that accordingly. The order in which they're listed is less important than ensuring that the current version is set correctly, because wherever this asterisk is, this is the file that would be viewed or downloaded. So that's important when it comes to core documents and the document stacking process. I'll review that in a little bit more detail. But the beauty of core documents is that that can be downloaded as a document set. You can run a listing from here as well. That's very helpful for monitors. If you've got external monitors or auditors and inspectors that need to view your core documents, and they can see from that listing which user at site has uploaded documents on what date that they've uploaded them. They'll also see whether files have been certified or not. So that's core documents. Now, the Core Docs module sits in parallel to the collaboration module. Now, depending on whether you're operating as a site or whether you're operating more as a sponsor where you're collaborating with a number of sites, will determine how you've actually structured your collaboration module. So first of all, from the site perspective, you might have all of your projects simply listed at this top level, or you might have a category of trials, whether that be, say, a tumour stream, or it might be a category that relates to projects in startup. Either way, it's completely up to your organisation how you categorise, how you would go into settings and categorise those projects. But if I click into one of those, just to give you an example, so from a commercial trials perspective, you'll have an investigator site file. And we consider there are four main principles of the investigator site file that we would discuss from the very beginning. The first is that the table of contents you use for your eISF will be consistent across all the trials that you run. So yes, it's customizable, where you can go into settings and add an additional folder or several, or you can remove some if there is an insistence from a sponsor or CRO to do that. But in principle, the table of contents you use and that we agree on at the very beginning for a template is then simply cloned and reused for each new project. The second principle is that the majority of our clients will have, they will use the inbox. And this serves as a document exchange folder. Instead of external users emailing confidential content, they can simply upload it into the encrypted folder. You can be notified that content has been uploaded, and you can then, from that inbox, push that off to ethics for approval or research governance for authorization. But that all happens from the inbox, and then can be very simply moved from the inbox into the relevant section of that site file. So then the third principle is that in addition to this being an electronic repository, that you can easily collaborate that project to your internal and external collaborators. You can also build in certain workflows at the site file. So we would typically work with our clients to set up workflows at the investigator brochure folder. So that would be a receipt workflow signed off by the investigator, by the principal investigator. And then you'll have training workflows that are typically turned on at the protocol, lab manual, pharmacy manual, and many of the clients are actually turning those read and understood workflows on now at the monitoring visit follow-up letter. The fourth principle I'll mention briefly here is that at the end of the study, although you've managed all of your core documents in that module, you do need to pull the project documents together with the core docs eventually, and that's typically once the study is closed out. And so what you would do is click into the core document subfolder of the site file, and from here you would import a specific document set, and that would be every core document that was active from site selection visit all the way through to closeout. And then you would choose as well which categories you wish to import. You can define that a little bit further as well if you needed to by, say, unselecting certain team members and then importing that document set. Outside of the scope of this, but I'll just touch on this very briefly, is that when you're ready for archiving, there's a very simple process, and we'll provide some help documents on this, simple process for archiving whereby you would select the project, you would lock that, convert the entire set of files to PDFA, and then you would long-term archive it within SiteDocs. But yeah, it's very important, although we've kept the core documents separate from your project docs, and we've done that really to support your efficiency, what we do need to do at the end of the study is ultimately import those core documents before you lock it and long-term archive. For instances, so that was really for the investigator site file. But for instances where your organisation is operating more as a sponsor, or maybe you've got a combination of commercial trials together with your investigator-initiated trials, if you are running IITs or more projects that you're operating as the sponsor, we would set up a template for you. Let me show you an example of that, where you'll have an IIT or an investigator-initiated study template, and then within that you'll have a standard trial master file. Typically we use the TMF reference model, and that's a model that was developed 13 to 15 years ago now by the industry globally to ensure that we're all talking the same language when it comes to documents. And we would typically use that as the starting point. Now, if a client has their own specific trial master file, or even if they have their own investigator site file table of contents, we can use either of those or both of those sets when we're setting up your templates. But when we've got your template designed, so for your trial master file and for your site file, you would use that then to set up all of your projects. So you'll clone the template, you would have your trial master file there, and then you can simply, in settings, clone the various site files to the number of sites that you're working with, whether that be a single site or whether that be multiple sites. I will show you the cloning process in a moment. Before I do that, I just want to talk with you a little bit about the document origin and the management of site documents within the TMF and then for the site files. So for the trial master file itself, the document origin is effectively your core study team. So whether that be your internal project managers, your administrators, all of that content's going to be uploaded by your internal team. So that's the origin of that content is your organization. Whereas for the individual site files, the origin, it has 3 points. The first origin of the site file is the linkage between a trial master file and the individual site files. Common example is a protocol where you can link or replicate, and I'll refer to this a little bit later. You would replicate a protocol from the trial master file into a site and then on towards the other sites as well. And then the advantage of that is that every time you have a new version of that protocol or new version of that core study document, you will stack that in the TMF, and that would replicate automatically into the various site files. So that's the first origin for a site file. The second document origin is any project-specific and site-specific document that is uploaded by your study team, so your central study team. That's uploaded into the site file. And then, of course, and then the third origin is relating to the site themselves uploading the content, whereby you will have collaborated the project site file to them. If you've collaborated that to an individual site, they will not see the TMF and they won't see the other site files. But then they will be able to upload their own project-specific, site-specific content into that site file. So I just wanted to give you that extra information in the case that you're operating as a not simply as a site running commercial trials, but if you're running IoT or operating in another manner as a sponsor, you might also be running collaborative studies. So that's the collaboration module. What I'll go on to now, before I show you the 4 steps for setting up a new project, is just review with you how users are added. So anyone who's an internal user of this portal, of your portal, you will be able to go to the users module, click on create, and you can add the email address, first name and last name, and you'll be able to add at your level and below. So if you're a portal administrator, you'll be able to add all of these user groups, including another PA. If you're a standard portal user, likewise anyone below there. But let me give you some clarification on the various user groups. These 2 user groups here, the internal user groups, are broken up into the portal administrator, who have access to settings, and these portal admins also have ready access to all of the projects. Now, there are some instances where we've been asked by clients to further separate or make private content from one portal admin to another, and there is a way of us doing that. So that's a further user group for a site administrator who can do that separation of roles. So if you've got, common example is an unblinded suite of content. In that case, we could separate that to, say, 1 or 2 portal administrators, and then they're responsible for collaborating that content to other users within the organisation or outside of the organisation. So there is a way of us further locking that down if needed. But in principle, portal admins have access to settings and they have access to all of the collaborative projects. Anyone who's an internal user will have access to all of the functionality except settings, and also they don't have default access to all the collaborative areas. It has to be specifically linked to them and collaborated to them. The external users, there are 3 external users. The first external user, if we look at this option here, an external user monitor. So if you're running a commercial trial, you need to add your monitor typically a monitor you would be adding with a 12-month expiry. And if that and when that expiry reaches, they will no longer see that on your drop-down list. So you would need to go back into users and extend that expiry period for that monitor. Now, for an external user non-monitor, both the monitor and the non-monitor will have access, read-only access to core documents. If you're adding a non-monitor, that might be someone in site startup at a CRO or sponsor who might need, say, 5 months expiry, or it might be an auditor or an inspector, in which case they would be applied a 1 or 3 day account. There's no need when you're adding a new user to add password, because this is just auto-generated when they receive their email notification. So that was just a little aside really on how new users are added. Anyone who's external, of course, won't be able to add a user at all. Just one last user group that I must stipulate here is that anyone who is added with this user group, which is external user, external access, no core documents, these users will not have access to, will not be giving access to core documents at all, but they will simply be collaborated to whatever restricted access is. So you do not need to, when you're adding this user group, it's because you don't need them to be viewing your own core documents as an internal user. Okay, let me walk you through, before I look at the electronic delegation log and the simple way that sites use this to account for signatures as well as delegation to project team members. And also I'll review the investigator payment, so SiteDocs Pay, just briefly. But before I do that, I will just show you the 4 ways of setting up a new project. And so keep this in mind also, not just for setting up commercial projects, but the same principles apply when you're setting up, say, a sponsored a trial as an IoT, or if you're operating as a sponsor. Under the settings, so step 1 is where you'd go to settings and click into the collaboration structure. You'll see your template. So whether your template's sitting at the top level or whether it's within a category, that doesn't matter. All you'll do is identify where that template is, select it, and then you'll see the clone option there available to you. So you click on clone, you would name this clone, so we'll call that eISF Nick, and then the protocol description is what's used there. Protocol title is used in its entirety for the description. When you're adding a name of a project, make sure you're consistent with the way your other projects are designed. It might be that you use internal codes for a project. That's fine, but ensure you also use a standard code that is understandable to your internal and also your external users. So that's the name, add the full protocol title. The prefix should also be associated in some way to the name of the project, because the way the auto naming works is that every folder, including the project folder itself and the subfolders, each have a prefix, and these build up to be the name of that file. I'll demonstrate that in a moment. So the description, the prefix is, in this case, it will be Nick, and then the reference will be eISF Nick, the same as the project. And this reference is then being applied to every folder within that project. Before I sign that off using my sign-in credentials, I'll just mention this users to be alerted here as well. Any name listed here, these are the ones who would be notified if there's ever a document-specific renewal date that you've uploaded anywhere in that structure. So these are the people who would be notified of that. I'll just remove them for now, and I'll use my sign-in credentials to sign that off. Right, that's step 1. Step 2 is where you would go into locate that project in your collaboration module, so whether that be in a deeper category or sitting at the higher level. And it's from here where you would In fact, what I'll just show you as well, just to give you a bit more working space, even though internally you'll be able to upload a cover image or a logo to your banner, there's a very simple way you can minimize that to give you more working area. Within the project, so step 2 is where you go to the project and upload your current documents. And the way you do this is simply navigate. There are 2 ways of uploading. The first is that you'll navigate to the folder. And then you can upload files into that folder. I'm just going to choose from a desktop, so I can download, I can import or choose files. I just choose a single PDF, and you can see how the auto naming works there. So it automatically names according to the prefixes of these folders. All you'll then need to do is further define that file name according to your naming conventions. And I'll call this Amendment 1, and then change the date. If you have a renewal date that you wish to switch on, so by default it might be turned off, you can turn that on for a single file if you needed to, and apply that renewal date. I'll just update. It always gives me, if I'm uploading a PDF, it will give me an option to certify that file, where I can use my sign-in credentials to sign this off. And so whether you're certifying on upload or whether you're selecting files and then certifying as a group, the importance of certification is that you're only doing that when you have a paper copy, a wet ink original that you're comparing it to. If you're simply uploading a native electronic file from your desktop, you would do that you'd upload without certification. I'll certify this particular file so you can see what that looks like. You can see that this is a certified file, and you can also see the certification statement that's laid down based on what I've just agreed to in that sign-off. Time and date stamping is always associated with the time zone of your particular portal. So this is the first way of uploading. The second way is if you have a new version of a file that's already been uploaded. So here we've uploaded Amendment 1. If we just go back along the breadcrumbs to the project. The second way is if you've got a new version, and what I'll do is click onto the hyperlink of Amendment 1. We're looking at then the file view, and I'm going to upload or go through a process called stacking, where we would upload a new version on top of this one. So we'll select a new file. Let's assume this is Amendment 2. The file name that I uploaded is referred to here as the document title. Now, many files that you upload will already have more full document naming in them, and it might be that you need to strip that back. So, for example, this is Amendment 2, and the file that you uploaded also referred to as protocol. Because protocol is already referenced in the auto naming, just be aware that you might need to strip the name or the document title back so that you're not repeating any content. So in this case, all I need to do is add a further definition around the document title, and that is the fact that it's a protocol and it's Amendment 2. I'll change the date as well. Update, and I'll update without certification this time so you can see the difference. If I go back along the breadcrumbs to section 3.1, you will see in there now that there's only Amendment 2 sitting there. Amendment, as I showed you before with the core documents, as I click into the hyperlink and scroll down, you can see here now that there's Amendment 2 and then Amendment 1 stacked beneath it. Now, as an internal user, you will have access to this functionality here. As external users, if you've collaborated to a monitor, they'll have the option to download a further version, but not with the other functionality. Now, particularly when you're uploading or you're starting a project and you've started to upload a number of your files, keep in mind that it's less important at that point as to the order in which they are listed. What's most important, though, is that your current version is applied correctly. And if you needed to make the other version or one of the other versions current, you can simply set that one as the current version. Wherever the asterisk is, This is what would be viewed, and this is also what would be downloaded. Right, so they're the two ways. This is step 2 of setting up a new project, and they're the two ways that you would upload files. Since we're in the site file, or it might be a project ETMF that you're managing, I'll also show you how files can be moved from one folder to another. What's really important is that your use of the inbox needs to serve you, needs to serve your internal processes. So if you have a mechanism internally or a process internally whereby documents can be received, they need to be sent off to, or some of them need to be sent off to ethics for approval or governance for authorization. If you've got some internal processes like that, include any necessary subfolders that support that process, where maybe files can be uploaded by a monitor, and then they can be, once the files have been sent off to ethics, they can be pushed into the second subfolder if necessary. But make your inbox serve your purposes. So let me just show you here 2 files that need to be uploaded, and then we'll move them. So we'll upload 2 files from a desktop. Let's call that doc1 and doc2. And then from here, we'll upload those. So I'll just keep those named as doc1 and doc2. And then you can also see the auto naming that's associated with the folders that I've uploaded to. Now, what you will notice is when I move files from this folder, that the auto naming changes according to the target folders. You can see here that, and I'll keep these named accordingly, so doc1 and doc2, and today's date. Update without certification this time. And I'll show you now the 2 ways of moving files. So the first way is simply cutting and pasting. Now that cutting and pasting might happen as a bulk action, where you're multi-selecting, bulk cutting, or you might decide to cut an individual file and then move that. So we'll move this one, or cut that one, and then it sits in the clipboard, and then we simply paste it as at a designated folder. Move that into section 13.2. And paste it. All right. So if you've done an action and it doesn't seem to have come through straight away, do just, so it's sitting in pending jobs, and just simply progress that. And what you'll do then is, the second way of moving files is that you would go to the inbox again, and or anywhere within project, and move and cut and stack a document. So this is where you would cut it again, same as before. Instead of cutting it and pasting it though, you're going to cut it and stack it on top of the prior version. So we're going to assume this is a protocol, Amendment 3, where you would click into the hyperlink, and from here, I'll click into that hyperlink and paste it as a new version. So instead of uploading a new version, we're going to paste it, the one that was in their clipboard. Fresh screen. Now, what you should really get into the habit of doing is uploading a new file or editing the file at the origin folder, as opposed to doing that at the target. But you can always edit it here as well. And so refresh that. And what you'll do then is, if necessary, still setting in pending jobs, is you'd actually go through and edit that to the correct name. So you can see that's named as doc2. We'll just edit this to Amendment 3. All right, so that's the second, that's step 2 of setting up a new project. The step 3 is where you would go in and collaborate the project to the necessary team members, and that you would also customize the workflows. So the first thing we'll do is collaborate. This is all step 2. You select the project, click on collaboration, and you would add a collaborator. Now, when you're adding someone, you will either add them, with full access, or they might just need to have read or download access, or in fact, they might need to be view only. And so you just select the appropriate access there once you've added the user or the multiple users, and then go ahead and add them as a collaborator. Now, what you might like to do, particularly for external users, and this is really about your own internal processes, is that you might add someone with read-only access, and then so you'd add them this way, and then you'd go into, say, the sponsor inbox if you needed to, and remove their read-only access just at that inbox. So you can select it, go to collaboration, and remove. There would be, in that case, a remove read-only access button. So you'd remove them that way. This also shows you how users are removed. So if you needed to remove a user from a project, you'd use this sort of mechanism. And then the second part of step 3 is the customizing of the workflows. So this is where you'll go to a project. You would know in advance where the workflows are designed into your portal. Now, these are what we're referring to as secondary workflows, where you can go back into the project, select the folder where there is a secondary workflow applied. If you ever find yourself without this button, the Edit Secondary Workflow button, it means that you haven't been added to the workflow area of settings. But what we'll do is we'll select this, go to Edit Secondary Workflows. All of this information will already be in place for you. So we'll already know that it's a training workflow, or it might be a record of receipt workflow switched on. There will be a key message applied already. This will be a standard key message. We'll already know what the due date will be. In this case, you see on screen, it's a 2-week due date. And if they haven't signed off in 2 weeks, then they'll have a weekly reminder. And then this is applied to all future documents only. And this, or you could set that as all current and future documents if needed. Now, so at a project level then, the only thing that you should really need to update is the list of collaborators. So just a point here that anyone who is listed in here, if you need members to be listed here, this is the process flow. They first need to be added as a user. Second, you need to collaborate them to that given project, and then they'll be listed here as workflow users to have to sign off on those certain documents. Then you go ahead and update it. Now, since we're speaking on workflows, what I've raised so far is secondary workflows. There is also a thing that we refer to as a primary workflow, and this is a workflow that can be turned on or associated to a single file. So let's say someone provides you a PowerPoint presentation and they're asking that certain team members are trained on that. What you do is you'd select the file and then assign a primary workflow to that. It's exactly the same form. So that's the primary workflows. Now, the fourth and final step that I wanted to show you on creating a new project is the use of a time-saving device that we refer to as replication. And this is where you would have for many projects, there are certain project documents that are common across a number of projects. So instead of having to upload the same document repeatedly, what you would do is set yourself up a master folder. And the example that I have on screen is a master investigator brochure, where you would have within that master folder your suite of investigator brochures. And in this case, we've got edition 67 of this particular IB. And this is where I would replicate that to the new project that I've set up. So it's edition 67.
Right then.
And I would point that or replicate that master file across to the new project. Keeping in mind that I will have also linked that or replicated that master file across to a number of other projects. This is a time-saving device where you would replicate this across, and then the advantage is that whenever you have a new version of this document type, let's say this is we've got an edition 68. All you would do is stack the new version on top of the prior version, like we have done previously. click on the hyperlink, and we'll upload edition 68. And I'll call that, okay, and then what we do is just update without certification. So then what happens is that new stacked version in the master then links automatically across to the new project that I've uploaded that file to, and so that edition 68 gets represented there. Now the great thing there too is that of course that's automatically replicated across to the other folders, the other projects. Now this is the example that I've mentioned on screen, of course, is the IB, but consider that for any document, project-specific document type that you are uploading repeatedly across projects. Consider if you need to have a master folder set up for that document type, and simply using the replication feature to simplify that process. Right, so this has really been an overview so far of the management of your investigator site file. So whether you're running commercial trials and using those core documents in your site file, or whether you're operating as a sponsor and you have a trial master file and you're linking that across your various site files. The one further feature that I wanted to show you, a module within SiteDocs that I wanted to show you, is the use of the delegation log. So if I just show you as an initial example of how that would look, where you'd have the principal investigator signing off details of the study at the top here, the statement that they've agreed to, and this can be customized at a site level or at a client level, and then individual staff members are added. So when a staff member is first of all added, they will first be added with a version 1 with the various tasks that are agreed to by the client. That staff member signs off, and subsequently the principal investigator approves that. Now, any further change that ever is made is represented as version 2 and signed off by the relevant team members. Now, just to illustrate how simple it is to add new staff members, all you would need to do is show that project. All right, I see I've chosen the wrong example because I'm set as view only. You take a project and it's as easy as adding a staff member with a particular study role. All the standard tasks would appear for that person, and then you add a start date. Now you can customize that, so you can remove tasks, you can add a project-specific task or a sponsor-specific task there as well, and then go ahead and add them. But the principle there is that it's being signed off electronically. Applying the signatures, the users have all confirmed that they're their legally binding credentials. Those signatures are being added to the log. Any change that's made is represented clearly as a new version on that log. You're able to account for a number of nuances through this process. And one of them is even the use of the ability to add in or an enabling of an acting PI. So if a principal investigator goes on leave for several weeks or months, then you're able to bring in an acting PI whereby they would take over the responsibility to sign on other team members or approve their various changes on that delegation log. So all the nuances that you would normally consider through the delegation and authority process of staff members, that's all accounted for on the Informed Projects log. The final piece that I wanted to share with you is really around investigator payments. The product SiteDocs Portal has been used across sites for the past decade, and a number of problems we have discovered over the years that need to be solved. One of those problems is the incomplete follow-up of investigator payments. The fact that there's often an active push for the milestone payments, for example, to be invoiced for. but there's a lot of the medical pass-through type costs or travel items or administrative items that aren't accounted for. And so when we're using SiteDocs Pay to create new projects for clients, that's all done within settings. And if I just show you an example project, every project that we set up here will have the contract in hand with the schedule of payments. We'll have a budget if the budget's not included in the contract. And then we'll have the schedule of assessments from the protocol plus the notation pages of that. And so when we're creating the templates, there are always three types of templates. The first is an administrative, where we would list here very clearly what the one-off payments would be, what the periodic payments would be, and that all have trigger dates. And then you'll have ad hocs that you can simply import as needed. These are all straight out of the contract. Then you'll have the medical and travel invoiceable items, where you would have the items listed together with their pricing. The various nuances of the investigator payment processing needs to be accounted for. For example, a contract amendment, whereby there's a change of a fee or there's a new item. These sorts of considerations need to be accounted for. The more complex of the template is the milestone template, and we always list out first the patient visit, the milestone payments, and then we build in amongst that the necessary probable medical pass-throughs or the travel items that need to be interwoven amongst that template. And so when it comes to managing the actual user interface, it's very simple for sites to go into SiteDocs Pay. Each project would be collaborated to the necessary administrators. That might be the administrator or the study coordinator. So they click into the relevant project, knowing that items that need to be processed and eventually paid for are either split into an administrative category or a patient or participant category. So first of all, if we look at the administrative category, the items that have been pushed through here in this particular example relate to either one-off payments, repetitive annual fees that come up. This study has obviously been ongoing for a little while, but they are progressed from incomplete all the way through to eventually being confirmed as being paid. And then you'll have participant-related items, quite simply where, let's say, the participant 19 gets enrolled to a project. We would create a participant here. You've got type of disease, status, and comments. These are just easy filterable categories for you. These are free text fields. Well, I simply create it. And then once you've created a participant or placeholder, all you need to do is assign the necessary templates. So you can see here you've got one milestone template. If it was a project where there are multiple arms, then you'll have multiple milestone templates to choose from. In this case, we'll just import that single one. It just takes a few seconds to build there. And then you've got yourself your participant 19 milestone items that can be simply progressed. By someone looking at, I know traditionally we've looked at source notes for this, but much more effective and less time consuming if it was done from by having remote read-only access to the eCRF, where you would complete and verify. We've included the verification step there just for the ease of potentially monitors having access to that step. But it's from here where you would have potentially a number of items for each patient, and then you can run an invoice or a statement based on all of the various participant items. Let me just create a statement just to give you an idea. Add your own statement number there. And with your own logo on there, a statement that would be downloaded or an Excel for association with the invoice that goes out. But it's also something that we see as equally as important as proactively following up payments for yourselves as sites, as organisations. It's equally as important to ensure that you pay third parties, whether that be service providers within your organisation or external. And the way this happens within SiteDocs, and that's built into the way the project is set up, is you'd simply multi-select once those invoices have gone out, and you can run a third-party report on the various amounts that need to be paid to particular third-party service providers based on participants completing certain visits or certain medical items, or indeed they might be non-participant related. And so that's a very simple way of accounting for not just what needs to be paid to us as sites, but also accounting for items that need to be very clearly paid to third-party providers. This really completes the training, the onboarding training for clients. So this might be that you're an internal user working on projects for commercial organisations, or it might be that you're running sponsored trials. Either way, we've looked at the file management of that. We've reviewed how you create new projects, and we've also reviewed the addition of users and the management of the other two primary modules, and that's the delegation log within Informed and the processing of items that need to be invoiced, so using the SiteDocs Pay module. But the organisations that the organisation that you're working with will have a pool of intel on the use of SiteDocs. But we run additional training sessions if necessary. This is an onboarding session, but if there needs to be further training on particular modules or certain features, this is something that you can request for as well, simply by jumping onto the help desk, reaching out to us, and we'll be in touch with you to schedule that appointment.